All right, let's dive in on the next game. Amidst a map of skulls, I have never laid eyes on this thing in my entire life. The map name is Abhor. An appropriate thing because there's erupting volcanoes of crying skulls and this is horrifying. I might have nightmares tonight. But first we're going to jump into the game. Coy Skew, I'm going to go with that pronunciation for his name, UEF on the north side, versus Voodoo, who has returned after an undetermined leave of absence. I have not seen him playing in a while, but we're going to watch his game here. Cybern is the faction of choice. He's going first land, a couple of power generators, mass extractors, at ×3, adjacency build for another land factory with some P-gens. First engineer will likely pick up this mass extractor, move over to the right and go to the hydro, but I can't swear by it because I don't know the build that he's going for. Coy Skew looks like he is going for mass land spam. This appears to be a 5K map. It is quite small. If it is a 10K, the being in the center forces it into a 5K, but I'm pretty sure it is 5. He is going for 5 total land factories. Nope, that is 4 land factories and then an air factory. But I can't see his actual build queue. Let's take a look at it. So we got another max 3 P-gens land factory, 2 P-gens air factory, 2 land factories. So it's 2 land, 1 air, 2 land. So it is later air, but not so much that he is going to get left in the dust if Voodoo decides to go air. Voodoo, on the other hand, is going to go for 2 more P-gens, another land factory, 3 P-gens, air factory, then 2 P-gens. Holy cow! This is like an identical build order. Is this a standardized one that fits with any map where the hydro is far away? Because that seems like too much of a coincidence that they are doing essentially the same thing. Although Voodoo is doing a bit more with his adjacency than Coy is. Notice how he's spacing out his P-gens so not as many can be hit by single bombers. And he is also making sure that he gets adjacency on 3 factories with his P-gens spread out, as opposed to, well, no, there are 3 factories taking adjacency, just a couple of them are only picking up in 2 ways. Looks like we got a tank and a scout headed out for Coy Skew. That's gonna go over to the left and move down to try to raid the hydro, pick up an engineer down that away. Checking on the reclaim, there is a fair bit. 80s, 100s, 75, a couple of 30s hither and yon. So you do want to get engineers out, reclaim it as quickly as you can so that you can get either more factories online or an early T2 mass extractor, potentially jump to a T2 factory and get an advantage that way. We got an engineer picking up 2 mass extractors, radar, and then a point defense to try to guard the expansion. Of course, this one is going to be a little bit safer, so engineer just moving out there, manual reclaim in the back, and finally moving to the hydro after a while to work on other things. That's going to be Snoop and Striker versus Mantis. Mantis twitching like crazy, successfully dodging a couple of shots, but Voodoo in the end is going to lose out to the Striker. Striker might be able to pick up that engineer before the Mantis can come in and recover, but I'm not 100% sure on that, and I sincerely doubt that that Striker can survive yet another Mantis. Striker is tearing the engineer a new one, 13 HP. Oh, the micro succeeded in dodging a shot, but in the end it doesn't even matter because that son of a gun is going to go down, and now we got 2 Mantis on the stack to defend the left expansion. Mantis moving up to the north, Striker and a scout over in that side, so looks like we're going to have to settle for the map balance that we already have. It would appear that Coy Skew has expanded a little bit better than Voodoo. That engineer kill helped him out tremendously. We got 21 mass per tick on the north side, moving to 23 versus 19 on Voodoo's side, not counting the reclaim, of course. And then we've got the 4th land factory going down right there for Voodoo. Compare that to the timing on this. Coy Skew filled his out slightly faster, maybe due to that extra little couple of ticks of mass that he had. And he's now got 2 engineers on power build, 1 moving over to reclaim, and he's moving his ACU out to the front to try and secure the middle. It's very interesting to me how units move around both sides, but not really to the center until later in the game. I don't know what the reasoning is for that, unless, of course, it's because there are, oh, that's water. You can actually hide your commander in there. Unless, of course, it's because there are barriers to entry around the edges and it's easier to cover the choke point with your ACU, so you move your units to the outside. Speaking of units to the outside, we got a Jester moving all the way across the map. Not a single kill to its name, and it is unfortunately going to run into 2 interceptors. Not going to be able to micro versus 2. Jester's going to go down, and that's going to provide a nice little wreck to pick up. Worth 154 mass. That is a donation, not on the scale of a czar, but definitely enough to make a difference in the early portions of the game. Looks like we got plenty of tanks flowing out for Coy Skew, who is now moved up to 29 mass per tick, double the power output of Voodoo, and he is laying in his 5th and 6th land factories and moving on to a couple more even. But we do have a Mantis in the back, gonna pick up a radar kill, maybe a mass extractor kill, and Kois is going to have to withdraw a couple of tanks to go and deal with that. Then on this side, we've lost the engineer, the radar, and we're going to lose 2 mass extractors, so Voodoo is going to even up the tables just a little bit by securing those expansions. Coy Skew was earlier on his engineers able to take the sides, but he did not have as many combat units out on the front line as Voodoo did. So we've got number 6 land factory coming up. That's going to, of course, increase Voodoo's spam, and he does also have a 2nd air factory built adjacent to the Hydro, although it is paused currently, probably due to power management issues. Let's go take a look at this as the ACUs come together to meet in the middle. Voodoo is borderline overflowing on mass, struggling to balance his economy since he underbuilt power so much. He has got 1,600 reclaimed to his name and 35 mass per tick steady income that he is now able to spend. You can see it going negative there. Coy Skew, on the other hand, has full bars as well. 560 power overflowing 110. That might be setting it up for an ACU upgrade if he drops a storage, charges up to 9K, and then he can get that upgrade very quickly without stalling. He does have 2,600 reclaim, 1,000 more than Voodoo has. And he does have about the same mass income. So right now this game is favoring Coy Skew, but of course it could go either way at this point. Got another land factory finished, but not turned on. Yep, there it is. I was suspecting as much. We got a T2 land factory on the way. That's going to introduce the infamous pillar spam for the UEF player. Over here we got a race to the finish by engineers. Looks like the UEF is going to win it, but if Voodoo's paying attention, you can reclaim that engineer and make things work. Nope, he was not paying attention. He's going to go to the other side, pick up that, and then move. There's the catch, but he is not going to be able to get it. We've got an attempted run by down the center, going to be caught by Mantis coming out of Voodoo's factories. That is going to be a denial on the right as well, and now these guys are reduced to poking and prodding at each other once again, trying to figure out where the weaknesses lie. And the weaknesses may have just been found. Voodoo pushing his commander up towards the center, going to claim those 2 mass extractors, finishing his hold on the center. Going to claim every single mechs but one, as Coy Skew is forced to move his ACU to the left to deal with the ingress of Mantis. Going to resecure those mass extractors, these as well, and he should be a-okay. Drops coming out now. We do have mesas in the back that have a substantial amount of reclaim on board, couple of hundred there, plus the mass extractor that you can claim. One over here for Voodoo as well, although Voodoo does not appear to be going for a transport anytime soon or worry about that mechs. Although, are those underwater mexes? Those are underwater mexes. Those would definitely be the safest to upgrade to T2 once the game gets to that point. We do have a T2 mass extractor online for Coy Skew. He does have a T2 engineer out as well, building his T2 P-Gen. He is still ahead on power and overflowing by 300 at the moment, which is very odd. I don't know why he's building a T2 power generator so soon, unless he intends to build it, build a shield, build another T2, and reclaim his T1 P-Gens while he's doing it to recover that mass and get another T2 or 2 mass extractors. And at that point, his T2 power would be necessary. But it's a little bit of an odd sequence nonetheless. Voodoo, let's see, that's 3K reclaim on that side. Voodoo moving up with Mantis to poke and prod at that ACU is on 2,500 reclaim. So he is caught up to a great degree, and he's now moved in and picked off the first pillar with an overcharge. This is going to be an important push because Voodoo knows that he doesn't have T2 online, and if he can push in a little bit, damage the build power, remove this base as a threat, he will be doing well later on in the game. But the bad thing is he doesn't have many units with his ACU because he's had to devote so many to the left. to deny that commander pushing. So he's actually in a bit of a sticky situation. Could have units moving in from the left to pincer his comm. We've got several pillars on the front line. Got to be careful of that. If he doesn't have enough power overflow, but he does. He has 260 power with the storage, so he should be able to drop overcharges like it ain't no thing, and that'll protect his commander. He doesn't have the gun upgrade though, so got to bear in mind that he doesn't have the range advantage to reach into the pack and kill those T2 units at the back. I hear shooting McBang-bangs happening all over the place. Looks like Voodoo is moving in on the right side expansion. 3 Mantis for 3 mass extractors. Sounds like a fair matchup. And I just realized that there is a pass-through over here. There was a run-by earlier. These tanks could be moving into the back and doing some damage. Kois is going to lose that forward expansion, but he does still control this side. He's dropped 2 T2 mass extractors already, working on a third, putting his mass income up at 49 per tick, with Voodoo losing out on the expansions over here that Kois picked up. 37 mass per tick to his name, but he is ahead on power. So we've got Rhinos moving out onto the field now. One thing to bear in mind with Rhinos, they are more expensive. They are individually more powerful than pillars. However, the pillars do have a higher HP value once you start stacking them up on a mass-to-mass basis. So it's difficult to tell which unit is decidedly better. With this particular map, it looks like the terrain's pretty flat, so Rhinos aren't going to have any issues targeting with their lasers. I'm going to say Voodoo can definitely defend now thanks to his move to T2 and having those units in one spot. Coy Skew is going to have to back up. He doesn't have any kind of upgrade on his ACU, although it does appear that he has overcharge. Let me verify. Yes, that would be the case, and he is using and abusing it quite heavily. He's going to have to back up his ACU, no danger of death there, but he is not going to be able to stop the run-by. Going to have to divert units from his home base to remove these before they're able to claim the mass extractors and hydro in the rear. Voodoo looks like he's moving units around the outside edge as well, even more outside, to try to pick off the radar and hydro there. Thanks to that radar though, Coy Skew should be able to see it coming and intercept with units of his own. He's rebuilding his expansion, getting things back online, and for the moment he is going to hold on to the score, the power, and the mass advantage as we move into the middle portion of the game. We're now decidedly in the T2 phase. We're looking at eco because the eco is going to determine who can move to T3 first, and we are also looking at the possibility of a mass pillar spam situation if Coy Skew decides to go that way. And we do have, indeed, 5 factories moving to T2 support status. That is going to let him unleash a swarm of pillars into the world that are going to overtake everything in their paths. Looks like we've got a single T2 factory over here with a single T2 support on the left, but those are assisted, so we are getting a little bit more than 2 factories worth. However, that is nowhere near the production that Coy Skew is about to bring online. Typically, your Cybern strategy at this point is going to be to hold as best you can versus the pillar spam while you move to T3, drop a couple loyalists on the field, and you'll be able to clean up. But Voodoo is actually in a bad position here because he doesn't have very many units to his name. You'll notice that he's occupied a small group over here that's not going to be able to stand versus the ACU. He's keeping a group with his commander to protect versus pillars, and he's got nothing left with which to deny this push on the right side. However, he did have the foresight to build a point defense, and he does have a radar down there, so his base will remain perfectly safe. We do have more unit movements on the right though, so things might not stay hunky-dory for long. Now, with the last couple of fights, Coy Skew has caught up on unit production. Most of his lack is because he's not building T1 tanks anymore. He's building the T2 support factories and getting ready to rock and roll with those. So now we're going to see a drastic swing where Coy Skew is going to have many, many more T2 units than Voodoo. Looks like we got a T2 airshift, gunships building up. We got a couple of jesters in the back, now adding renegades into the mix. And I don't see any mobile flak. Nope, there are. There's 2 on the north side. So let me rephrase that. No mobile flak near the ACU. Voodoo might be going for an attempted snipe here. We got a couple of pillars and some T1 units on the left. Should be able to deny those relatively well with the Rhinos that are moving into position. And Voodoo's now bringing his ACU back away from the front line, which I think is wise considering how far into the game we are. Got pillars, a couple of mobile missile launchers, flak. Overall, a decent unit mix, although some shielding might be a good idea. More T1 units moving to the south. We've got a Lobo on the front line that's going to be able to knock out that T1 point defense, and then that expansion is going to come under Coy Skew's control. The question here is whether or not Voodoo reveals his hand and uses the T2 gunships to deny the push, or whether he loses those mass extractors, deems it okay to keep his secret, and waits on his units to respond from the factories. It appears that that is going to be what he does. Counting on interceptors, let me go take a look-see at what's going on here. We got 33 on Voodoo's side. Coy Skew rocking a solid 31. So Voodoo should win air at this point due to the fact that he can meet shield with his gunships and free up his interceptors to do all the damage they could ever want to on those interceptors. Excuse me. Coy Skew has camped out in the water, going to protect his commander from any potential snipages. I don't know. I was trying to figure out with the pan. He might actually be far enough below the water that he can't be reached by attack missile AoE, which would be a rather large deal. It gives you an excellent place to hide your commander, at least until the very later portions of the game. Although Cybran, with their drop pattern on torpedo bombers, you will be able to pick up the ACU in that pond. So it's not 100% safe, but it's a huge risk to build torps because they can't attack land units. So if you build the torps and then fail, you've sunk all that mass into something and you won't be able to recover. So if the ACU's in a situation like this, you're better off really just focusing on killing off the expansions, reducing the amount of map that your opponent controls, and hoping to just strangle him in the economy war later on. Looks like all of those factories are pumping out pillars as quickly as they possibly can. We got 83 mass per tick online for Coy Skew versus what looks like a power stall on the south side. No! 25 mass per tick. All of that eco went into T2 gunships. Voodoo lost his expansions due to not using the gunships to hold on to them, and now he is in a bad spot indeed. Every second this game ticks forward, his advantage shrinks. Actually, not even his advantage. I don't think he had an advantage in the first place. He does have all of these gunships. He could move around the outside edge and snipe off basically all of this before his opponent could respond. He does have it all scouted. I just don't know if he's going to be able to make this work. He put off his upgrades far too long on economy. He's been out-teched, and now without his expansions and map control, he is done for. Looks like Coy Skew is going to finish up that T2 upgrade on top of the gun comm. Voodoo's still on an unupgraded commander, although it does have a veterancy. That's going to make this ACU incredibly tough to kill, able to overcharge its way through a T2 army. It looks like these units are going to move into the back of the base, picking up the Hydro, and yet more units. I don't know why Voodoo is not using his gunships. If he did, he would be able to inflict damage on these and maybe recover his position. Looks like we are going to get a claim on the expansion over here. Not enough pillars in one spot to deny, and Coy Skew is not going to risk his commander to come out and fight. I can't really argue with that decision. Coy Skew has picked up every single mesa all the way around the map, so he's got a good amount of mexes just from that. About 8 or so. Units moving into the base, Voodoo moving in to try and get an overcharge, but I don't think he's going to be able to reach those units before they move out. Pillars, of course, do have a bit of a speed advantage over a lot of things, since they do have that 3 on their stats. Most of your T1 is going to be sub 3 and even into the T2 phase, unless you have the raiding units, the hover tanks, or the mongoose and hoplites. Most of your unit speed are going to be below that 3 mark. Pillars are pretty dang good at running by stuff, kind of like Mantis in the T1 phase. Pillars moving into this expansion now. Looks like Rhinos are going to be able to put up a good defense, but there's just so many units pouring through the left side door. I don't know that that can be denied. Options for Voodoo now would be to move into the base and try to snipe off the T2 power, which would effectively cripple Coy Skew's production, since he is spending quite a substantial amount of power to run all these factories, shields, and other things that he is doing. That would be a good snipe. Again, moving around the outside edge and eliminating all that mass would be a good option. Voodoo now on the move. Taking a look here, we got 32 interceptors still. He burned a couple to scout, and there's now 72 on Coy Skew's side. So I think, unfortunately, that is going to clinch the end unless he can lure something over the flak and reduce that air lead. He is slowly going to get ground into a paste. Looks like there's an attempt for a couple of mass extractor upgrades going on. Voodoo realizing far too late that he's been outstripped in eco by such a significant margin that he now has to move, but I don't think it's going to be enough. We got pillars moving in from the left, artillery moving in from the right. If he takes, no, that's mobile flak. No, there's 4, 5, 6 mobile flak. Corsairs moving in on targets, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Interceptors moving out to the front to try and get a guard in place. Looks like Coy Skew isn't even going to move his interceptors in, just going to have faith in his flak to eliminate all of those gunships. Pillars moving in now, eliminating a mass extractor. Dropped all of this to the left. Voodoo's going to move his ACU in and I think accept fate. Take that kill. This could have played out in so many different ways. It was even for most of the early portion of the game. I think the switch came when Coy Skew decided to go for the teching game as opposed to the spam game. He was able to hold off Voodoo for just long enough, and then with all of those pillars pouring out of the factories, he was able to gain the upper hand quite easily and win the game, teching the entire way to the point that he now has almost double the mass income of his opponent. That is a bad way to lose a game. Slowly but surely and steadily. Voodoo throwing out the good game there. That is exactly how you want to play it. Coy Skew did a fantastic job of not really taking any risks, getting his units in the right place at the right time as best he could, and then slowly but surely exerting map control over his opponent to gain the upper hand. Beautifully played. Beautifully played. I would definitely agree that this is a very weird map, but I already commented on it earlier, so we're going to dive right into analyses and bump up our sim speed to match. Luxie on the north, Yudi on the south, 2100 versus 1900, although I do not know how rusty Luxie is. I know Yudi's been playing quite a bit recently, so we'll just have to wait and see how this matchup pans out. Luxie dropping a land factory first, couple of P-gens, couple of mass extractors, get that engineer out, build the 4th mechs, and going for a very similar build to what we saw earlier in the Voodoo game. Yudi is going to go for a similar pace as well. He's got his first land factory down 3 mechs, P-gens going in, second land factory, air factory third after 5 additional P-gens, and he's actually got a point defense queued up in the center with a land factory. So as opposed to last time when most of the game was played out in the edges, it does look like Yudi's going to try to secure the middle, and I don't really blame him for that because there is quite a bit of reclaim in the middle. There are, let's see, 8 mass extractors to control if you can lock down all 4 of the choke points, and life can be pretty good if you get set up back that away. I wish that there was a mechanic in Subcom that lets you actually animate the maps, and that way you could have erupting eye sockets, but I guess we'll just have to live with what we got and the creepiness that that entails. Mantis and a Scout moving towards the south, Mantis and a Scout moving towards the left, Mantis and a Scout moving everywhere, even to the right side of the map. You get a Mantis, and you get a Mantis. I guess when every faction has the run-by mechanics, the only choice left is to run by as much as you possibly can. There's another pair headed out. Perfectly symmetrical playstyle so far. All right, Mole's going to give both Mantis an equal leg up. We got a little bit of micro from Luxy that is going to win him the matchup, so he's going to get a free Mantis to take out that Engineer with. Of course, you got to be careful when you're microing Mantis because the turn speed of the turret is slower than the turn speed of the unit. So if you circle around too much, you're not actually going to be able to shoot at what you're pointing at, but he is going to get over to the south fast enough to be able to pick off that Engineer before it can get into the water away from the Mantis. That's going to give Luxy the upper hand on the left side of the map. Plenty of Mantis streaming out to the edges for both players. We've now got 2 land factories online for Luxy, building number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and do not forget about the all-important 9th land factory, spamming power up with 1 Engineer, so he is going for a drastically low power build, going to have to carefully monitor what's going on to make that son of a gun work. And on the south side, Yudi looks like he's actually going to overflow. You better start a freaking T2 mass extractor there, bro, because otherwise you are... Okay, good. Woo, that was close. He started building a couple of things, and now he's going to drain that out. He can get his Hydro online, get that taken care of, and be in a good spot. Yudi ahead on score, 3.3K. Now they might get to tied. That lead is not actually as much as I thought it was. Yudi at 27 income, Luxy at 31, and both of these guys with the comparable amount of units. Looks like we got 3, 5, and 8 factories planned, so 1 less for Yudi. He forgot about that dang 9th. Oh no, he's got 1 up on the front, so both of them will have 9, but now Luxy is going for 10. How many land factories is too many? We may find out this game. I don't see any plan in place for going for a fast T2 or fast T3. It looks like both of these guys are all in, committed on the T1 land spam. Mantis moving over here, try and pick this up. That is a very odd looking PD template, although I guess the wall sections will prevent diagonal fire in some cases, so that does make a little bit of sense. Mantis going to be able to pick up the first intruder. Finish the PD! Finish the PD! Oh, what? Is that a targeting bug? What on earth? Can't even shoot the Engineer. Holy cow. That's going to lose 2 Mantis for Yudi, and that expansion is going to be secured. That was a little bit of bull there. But on the right-hand side, Yudi is going to be able to pick up an Engineer kill, preventing this mass extractor from being built, and he might even pick up all of the mass extractors. Nope. But he is going to get further into the base. Looks like in the center, Luxy's brought his commander in. He's going to be engaging with the vast quantities of T1 spam entering the center of the arena. Yudi getting a T1 point defense online, as we discussed earlier, to prevent any intrusions on his side. So he's just going to try to lock down that center and do what he can. Luxy, on the other hand, has got the unit advantage on the right. He's going to try to push up a little bit, but then run into a point defense from his opponent, and that is going to force him back. So Luxy at the moment looks like he has superior map control, but he has lost quite a few things. He's lost access to his Hydro, lost his right side expansion, and now we've got units moving in on the commander. That definitely looks to me like a gun upgrade, and it is. Looking at the chat box, I do love it when people have the notify mod on because it makes our jobs easier as casters. T1 bomber coming in, trying to even up the fight. Luxy going to do a little bit of AoE damage, soften up those targets before his own units tear into him. And Yudi is going to rely on his ACU to hold the center as he moves all of his units over to the left in an all-in gamble on claiming that edge. But now we've got a counter move by Luxy, so he may not be able to get away with it. He's going to have to pull his units back in to secure that side. This is going to make life very difficult for Yudi. I'm not sure which way this is going to swing. Yudi appears to have slightly more Mantis than Luxy has. Luxy has got more eco though. 42 mass per tick income. Got a T2 mass extractor. Not working on a second one. Power stalling to try to get that gun done ASAP. He sees all these Mantis coming. He's like, I gotta get this. There's the gun. That might save him. 3,200 mass reclaimed. Yudi at 3,200 as well. So these guys are on even stance with that. Yudi now is wandering into the range of a gun comm, and that, my friends, is a horribly horrible idea. And that was what we called a repetitive redundancy. Yudi's gonna retreat. He does still have enough tanks on hand to trip up the pathfinding on that ACU and hopefully keep his commander safe. Mantis is kinda struggling over here. Don't know what that's all about. Just stuck on the mountainside. Don't mind me, I just thought I'd go rock climbing for a little bit. Get away from the stress of the battlefield and all of the noise down there. You gotta let your eardrums rest once in a while, you know? Over on the left, we've got a lot of Mantis versus one Mantis hiding behind a hill. This is why terrain is important. Please keep it in mind. Please. Alexi's gonna retreat over to the right-hand side. He does have the gun upgrade still, but he probably doesn't want to get tangled in too many units. As we all know, a T1 commander is roughly equivalent to 20 tanks if microed correctly, although 20 tanks can kill the ACU if the ACU gets swarmed and has something else that soaked a little bit of damage. The commander does not want to come into that many T1 tanks. However, he is going to move up. Now that he sees these moving towards his base, he's got a couple of T1 point events to fall back on, and there's not many Medusa in the mix for either player, so point events are going to be extremely effective. When you're fighting a Cybran, the rule of thumb is build enough Medusas to kill the Auroras you're versus. If your opponent starts building loads of T1 point events, obviously mix more in. When you move to the T2 phase, Medusas are invaluable in your mix because they can stun the T2 units and let your T1 overcome them. But when you're in the early portion of the game, you want Mantis for Mantis when you're fighting, because tanks will win over artillery when microed correctly. That's the counter to Zooey spam. That's the counter to typically any arty spam. You build some T1 tanks and you come out just fine. Excellent move by Yudi to the north. He's going to secure the left side expansion in Luxie's base. We've got units moving to the right now. Suddenly, the amount of Mantis is just too damn high for Luxie to keep a lid on. We've also got an air win taking place for Yudi, so this opens up an excellent opportunity for shenanigans in the air game. This is the reasoning. Yudi has got no T2 mass extractors at all. Luxie has got 3 T2 mass extractors and a T2 land factory, so the slip in map control is absolutely justifiable. The question now is whether or not he can use the mechs upgrades and the T2 factory to regain the control that he lost and then exert pressure. This is not good. We've got Mantis in the back of the base, and those could potentially cause a huge amount of harm to Luxie's eco. They're already shredding away at the HP on that T2 mechs. We've got the group on the right moving in. Luxie forced to defend himself, gunning solo with that gun comm. Yudi has got the gun upgrade as well on his ACU, so once he gets into range, the damage is going to rack up incredibly quickly on Luxie's comm. We got a T1 point event trying to eat through the Mantis swarms. Luxie focus fired now. I think that's the end of it. 2,000 HP, 1,000 HP, and boom! That is the end of it. That is what happens when your T2 gamble pays off badly. Yudi, entirely T1 for literally the entire game. T1 mechs, T1 comm, T1 Mantis. He was able to overcome his opponent through sheer weight of numbers. If he had not pressed his advantage at that time, given another few minutes, Luxie probably would have been able to recover and use the Rhinos to his advantage. But as things played out, the T1 spam was just too damn strong. That is gonna wrap everything up for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like and share it with someone. If you want to support the channel, catch the streams, or join the Discord, check out the links in the description. Thank you all for being at least partially insane, and I will see you in the next one.